Nasa was a nerdy, friendless loser who wasted his life gooning to science textbooks so he could live up to his name. However, everything changed when Truck-kun almost took his life, so he decided to marry the first girl he saw and land his rocket in her moon. His misfortune all started when he was born with a face that made onions cry. Upon realizing how ugly he was, his father decided to name him after Nasa so he could be unstoppable and make up for his ugly face. However, this only brought mockery from his mates and even adults because he was the direct opposite of his name. He wasn't going to space like NASA, but was a useless waste of space. Due to this, he gets angry and starts to study hard, so he can one day be like Neil Armstrong. He becomes a very bright student, unlike Hugh, who bottoms the class, such that in the third year of middle school, he meets his teacher to tell her he wants to apply to Tsukasa High School, shocking her. The teacher gets concerned, saying the school only admits students with high IQs, but Nasa replies that he is certain he can get in. The ugly four-eyed teacher checks his grades and confirms that he could get in, but she asks him if he has a backup school to be on the safer side, but the overconfident fool boldly responds that he doesn't need a backup school. Hearing this, the teacher realizes that not all who have good grades actually have common sense, and further tries to convince him to be more rational. But the dude is not gonna bend, not even if it is Diddy asking. He leaves the staff room sure that he is smart enough to pull this off. On his way home that night, as he contemplates his decision, he suddenly sees a pretty chick across the road drinking booze, and instantly likes her, because she is the most beautiful thing his ugly eyes have ever seen. So he decides to take his chances and talk to her. However, as he approaches her, simping like a dead-brained idiot, he gets enlisted in Truck-kun's next victims list and gets hit immediately, knocking him to the ground. Meanwhile, even though he should be concerned about his life, all this bozo can think of is how he couldn't get the girl's name before he died. He reasons that he can't die like this because he is still a virgin boy with no experience of culture. He suddenly sees the girl and wonders why she is also covered in blood. The truck driver appears worried about them, and while the girl tells him to get Nasa to the hospital, he replies that she also needs to be treated as she was also hit when she got in front of him, trying to save him. Nasa is shocked and tries to talk, but the girl tells him not to because he is badly injured. Then she turns away to leave, telling him to get some rest and forget he ever saw her when he wakes up. As she walks away towards the full moon in the sky, he is reminded of the fairy tale about Princess Kaguya, who returned to the moon but couldn't get to be with her love. He suddenly wakes up, shocking the worried truck driver, who is calling the ambulance. The idiot then asks the driver if he knows which way the pretty girl went, but the driver tells him he should be lying down and expecting treatment. However, he replies that he can't do that because the girl is cute. He then tells the driver goodbye and runs off immediately as fast as he can to find the girl. He soon sees her, and the sim approaches her like a very thirsty perv to thank her for saving his life earlier. While he introduces himself, she is surprised that he is still able to move with such injuries, but tells him to sit beside her. She wipes his blood and gives him her shawl, surprising him because he can't believe girls smell this good. She stands up to leave so she can call him an ambulance, and he immediately tries to follow her, but falls to his knees. The girl tells him that his legs are broken, and since the adrenaline from the accident is about to wear off, he will soon lose consciousness. This begins immediately as she steps out, but bro refuses to pass out and summons the strength to stand up again to follow her. She is surprised and tells him he is really going to die if he continues doing this, but he tells her about the story of one Princess Kaguya, and says he would rather die while fighting for his love than lose sight of her, because he might never meet her again. He confesses his love, surprising her, but she tells him she can only accept it if he puts a ring on it. The idiot agrees, without thinking, the exact reason for the spike in divorce rates, but just then, he collapses to the ground and wakes up in the hospital several days later. However, she is nowhere to be found, but Nasa is grateful because she saved him. Otherwise, it could have been his welcome party in hell. As he recovers, he begins to study hard again, but because of his condition, he misses that year's exam. However, the following year, he passes with a top score, but rejects all the offers he gets and chooses to work in different service jobs, hoping to see that girl again. He even rents his own apartment when his parents start to complain about him working too much. At the age of 18 one day, while he reviews his assets portfolio, he hears a knock on his door. Opening it, he shockingly finds his crush standing right before him, who then introduces herself as Tsukasa, since she never mentioned her name when she first met him. She then tells him she wants to discuss something with him. Later inside, she suddenly gives him their marriage registration, shocking him. She reminds him of the condition she gave him when they met and tells him it is time to fulfill it, surprising him. However, he agrees to it anyway, and as he signs the documents, he wonders if this is even real because it looks like he is about to be scammed. After signing these, they head to the ward office to submit the registration, and on their way, he realizes that she has never mocked his name, prompting her to tell him a short biography of Nasa and how it's cool having that kind of name, which suddenly relieves him of all the angst he's had since he was born about his name. They soon reach the ward office, and after submitting all the necessary documents, the officer gives them a flower vase as a gift to congratulate their union. On their way back, she asks him if he has 2 futons at his place, but he replies that he only has 1. Just then, he realizes that getting married would mean they will now have to share the same bed, and he becomes embarrassed at the thought of this. Getting home, Nasa gets even more embarrassed at the fact that Tsukasa will now live with him, and they will have to share the same bed. He starts thinking of how they will sleep on the bed together and begins some useless math calculations that don't solve any problems. He then decides to buy a semi-double bed to contain both of them. But when he checks Amazon, he realizes that it can't be delivered that night and trashes the CEO for not doing better at his job. He continues to analyze how they will both sleep, and while he thinks of some weird positions, she suddenly appears, saying that there is no way she is going to sleep that way, shocking him. He wonders how long she has been around, and she replies that since he took the Sendokuman stance from Slam Dunk. She shows him her luggage, making him realize that her staying with him is not a prank. However, he still doubts and decides to ask her subtly. So he asks her if no one at her place will be worried as she is out so late, but she replies that she doesn't really have a place anymore, shocking him because he is about to go broke, feeding another mouth besides him. She asks about his one-bed situation and still embarrassed. He tells her he will sleep on the floor. However, she replies that she wouldn't want him to fall sick and suggests going to a nearby hotel. She tells him to remain chill since she is now his wife, but this only makes him wonder why she married an ugly moron with a gloomy future like himself. He asks her this, and she tells him that that is the stupidest question she has ever received. However, he yells at her that his question is valid, because they barely know each other yet. Hearing this, she reverses the question, and the simp replies that it's because he loves her. She then tells him that she married him obviously because she loves him too, prompting him to ask her why she fell in love with him, but she refuses to answer. She soon attempts to leave for a nearby hotel, but fearing that she could disappear from him again, he tells her to sleep in his house, suggesting that he will go buy an extra futon. They head to the futon store immediately, and while Tsukasa checks out which futon to buy, Nasa suddenly becomes embarrassed at the thought of this being an indirect date. He decides to hold her hand as expected on a date, surprising her. Later, after returning from the store with their new purchase, Tsukasa tests the futon and tells him to try lying on it too, but he is too embarrassed to do that because his testosterone levels are off the chart, and his short gun might auto-aim. She asks him if there is a bathroom, and he shamefully replies no, saying he goes to the nearest bathhouse first thing in the morning, making her realize that he doesn't even have anything she needs to spend the night. They both head to the convenience store to get her a female's necessities, and while she later changes her clothes, Bro's mind goes wild as he reconsiders risking it all tonight. She soon comes out and thanks him for buying her pajamas, and then he attempts to go change inside too, but she tells him he could just change before her. However, he says that would be embarrassing, and she agrees, saying she'd be embarrassed too if he saw her noodles. As he steps into the supposed changing room, he rethinks Tsukasa's statement and wonders if this means she sees him as a man and gets nervous around him too. After changing into his pajamas, he steps out only to see that she has styled her hair into buns, which instantly makes him drool because she is the cutest girl he has ever seen after Kim Kardashian. Lights out, and the idiot continues to admire how cute she is, even with the moonlight effect, causing him to think that he might not sleep anytime soon under this condition. He tells her how glad he is that they could fulfill their promise to get married today, and they both bid each other goodnight. However, Nasa struggles to sleep as he can't keep his mind and Magnum at rest, having a girl sleepover for the first time. He again admires how cute she is, but he is surprised when he sees that Tsukasa is a pro kickboxer on bed. She rolls off the futon, and he stands up to adjust her back to the futon. He wonders if he could hug or kiss her like this, but as he attempts it, he reconsiders, saying he would rather have her participate. He returns to his bed, only for Tsukasa to suddenly get up and drink water while still asleep. She returns to the futon and stands there, making Nasa wonder why the heck she is just standing behind him. He wonders if she is also thinking about hugging or kissing him while he is asleep, but she suddenly collapses on him and pulls his cover off his body for herself. The next day, when Tsukasa wakes up, she wonders how her hair is down and how she has two covers with her. She suddenly attempts to pull her top, but he stops her because he is not ready to desecrate his virgin eyes. She enters their changing room, and the cultured idiot starts thinking of the cleavage he saw earlier. Tsukasa teases him about this, embarrassing him. Seeing her dressed in an apron, Nasa becomes amused and tells her she looks like someone's wife, to which she replies that she is his wife. Following that, as Tsukasa prepares to make breakfast, she sees his fridge stocked with food, surprising her that he actually cooks. Bro takes the opportunity to boast about carrying out extensive research to create a dietary plan that perfectly accommodates his nutritional needs. He then presents the nonsense he calls a meal, which he prepares by throwing in all the ingredients at once. Tsukasa wonders what sort of stupid dude this is and tells him he is only doing chemistry and not cooking. She then tells him to give her just 10 minutes to make something delicious.
Wow.
She soon sets the table with different meals, which shocks Nasa that she could actually pull that off in 10 minutes. Upon tasting the meal, he was amazed because it was the most delicious meal his mouth had tasted since he had left home. He tells her she is a good cook, and she replies that she learned from Gordon Ramsay. After eating, Tsukasa asks Nasa about the bathhouse he talked about, and the disgusting boy realizes that he didn't bathe the previous day. However, the cultured noob anticipates how she would look in her birthday suit when she bathes. Since Bro only has basic bathing supplies because his ugly ass doesn't bathe regularly, they head to the store to get some complex materials like moisturizer and toner, which Nasa has never heard of in his life. They soon reach the bathhouse, where they meet an ugly purple-haired chick named Kaname, one of Nasa's classmates back in middle school. Kaname is shocked to see him with a girl, because she always knew him to be a riskless moron like you, who is unlikely to ever bag a girl. She begins to say some dirty things, which prompts Tsukasa to ask Nasa who the heck this bozo is. Nasa introduces Kaname to Tsukasa, and says she has been managing the bathhouse for years to help out her family. Meanwhile, Kaname notices the strange chemistry between Nasa and Tsukasa, and asks if they are dating, to which Nasa casually responds that they are married, stunning Kaname so much that her heart almost pops out of her chest. After recovering, she congratulates them on their marriage, and offers them free use of the bathhouse as a gift. Tsukasa then heads in to take a bath, but as Nasa starts to follow, Kaname blocks his way with her broom, saying the gift is only for his wife and not his shapeless ass. She teases him, admitting she never thought he would get married. She was thinking he would grow old and lonely without plot development. Kaname then asks about their wedding ceremony, but Nasa awkwardly explains that ceremonies are an unnecessary expense these days. Hearing this, Kaname replies that it is his broke ass talking, and adds that he isn't a top G who can make his wife truly happy if he thinks like that. She argues that a marriage without a proposal, a ring, and a ceremony is just a real-life version of Sims 3. Motivated by her words, Nasa passionately declares his love for Tsukasa and vows to dedicate his life to her happiness. And while he says this, Tsukasa appears at that instant, overhearing his declaration. She feels embarrassed immediately as she can't believe that her man is out there, shouting his love in public like a certified moron. Later, as Nasa takes his bath, he daydreams about how lucky he would be to see his wife in her creation state. However, his naughty imagination is interrupted when Kaname suddenly enters and teases him about how tiny his sausage is. In the women's bathing room, Tsukasa finds it empty and is happy that she can enjoy some alone time to play with herself. However, before she can do that, a useless bitch with a head shaped like a doorknob named Adia interrupts. She is the older sister in Kaname's family, and she starts to panic as she apologizes like a guilty thief for invading Tsukasa's privacy. To make amends, Adia offers to wash Tsukasa's back, and as she does, she marvels at Tsukasa's smooth skin, comparing it to silk and oddly to Apple's latest iPhone 16. However, she soon realizes how stupid her comparison sounds, and she begins to apologize again for thinking like an ape. During their conversation, they introduce themselves, and Aya is surprised to learn that Tsukasa shares Nasa's last name, prompting her to ask if they are relatives. Tsukasa decides to lie as she claims to be Nasa's younger sister. Several hours later, Nasa dreams about the night he first meets Tsukasa. His sleep, however, is abruptly interrupted when Tsukasa wakes him, letting him know she's finished bathing. Aya soon joins them, casually mentioning that she has met Nasa's younger sister, which leaves him confused. Despite his shock, he decides to go along with Aya's assumption, pretending that Tsukasa is indeed his younger sister. Meanwhile, Tsukasa asks Aya how she knows Nasa, and Aya explains that they were classmates and shares a bit about her family's history. She reveals that her grandfather, who once managed their business, passed away years ago, leading to tough times for the family. But thanks to Nasa, who used his marketing skills to revive the business. Shortly afterward, Nasa and Tsukasa head back to the house. On the way, Tsukasa curiously asks if Aya is pretty, and the clueless idiot launches into an overly enthusiastic monologue about how incredibly cute Aya is, not knowing that it is making Tsukasa jealous. As they continue walking, they pass by a marriage ceremony in progress. At that moment, Nasa suddenly notices that Tsukasa seems upset, which brings Kaname's words to his mind, that a marriage without a proper ceremony feels incomplete. He assumes Tsukasa is feeling down because they never held a ceremony themselves. However, all Tsukasa wants is for him to give her a compliment, just as he did for Aya. When Tsukasa finally expresses her feelings, admitting that she only wants to feel pretty in his eyes, Nasa, still clueless about her message, decides to fulfill her wish by making the impossible possible, thinking all he needs to do is plan a wedding ceremony. He hands her the key to the apartment and runs off, leaving Tsukasa wondering how difficult it is to just tell her she is pretty. She begins walking back to the apartment alone, unaware that she's being watched by a mysterious yellow-haired girl sitting in a black Mercedes. She soon returns to the apartment, and after waiting for a while, she feels lonely and wonders when Nasa will be back. She can't leave home either because there is only one key to the apartment, so she has to wait till the idiot is back. In the meantime, she decides to clean the house to keep herself busy, and while she thinks that Nasa would be impressed, she remembers that he is a capable guy, so this won't freak him out much. She decides to clean some other places he might have overlooked in the past, like his closets and under the bed. However, she changes her mind as she reasons that she might see some forbidden magazines common to hormonal Gen Zs. She proceeds to cook since that's the only option left, but as she prepares to cook, the doorbell rings. Thinking that he is back, she goes to open the door but is shocked when she sees Chitose, the yellow-haired bitch from earlier. Chitose comments that she thought she'd be living large in a luxurious condo in the Bahamas. Not the pig's pen, she calls an apartment. But Tsukasa won't be insulted in her husband's house, so she shuts the door on her messed-up face. Chitose starts to bang the door hard. She tells Tsukasa she came to pick her up as the great-grandmother has been very worried since her sudden disappearance. Tsukasa opens the door and tells her to stop the cab, saying that she knows Chitose had begged the grandmother to reveal where she is, and after that, she decided to come pick her up even though their grandmother tried to stop her. Chitose becomes speechless, and Tsukasa suddenly reveals that she is now married, and then says she will come and greet their grandmother when it's time. Chitose is shocked as Tsukasa shuts the door on her again, and she becomes sober that her only sister has left her. Nasa finds her here and asks what happened, but she looks away, telling him not to worry. However, he hands her a hanky to wipe her face, saying he can't overlook an ugly girl crying on the road. She soon reveals that a relative of hers has refused to come home, and she doesn't know what to do, which makes Nasa wish she can help. She tells him he is nice and asks what he is doing around here, and he replies that he was trying to look for where to propose. Meanwhile, as Chitose attempts to describe a certain place to him, she suddenly hears Tsukasa's voice calling him darling. Chitose immediately connects the dots and becomes furious when she realizes that the guy she's been talking to all along is none other than the fool who Tsukasa got married to. Nasa, trying to act cool, attempts to convince her that he's the perfect match for Tsukasa. But Chitose tells him she will never accept a disgusting broke idiot with the face of a paper bag like him as Tsukasa's husband. Nasa tells her is understandable and starts using the principles he learned from the 48 Laws of Power, which amazes Tsukasa. However, Chitose isn't having any of it, so she steals him without hesitation and drives him straight to a massive mansion. Inside, she reveals her plan, which is to frame Nasa using incriminating photos. She immediately summons two stunning maids, Charlotte and Aurora, instructing them to take scandalous pictures of Nasa as evidence of infidelity. Hearing this, Charlotte wastes no time and starts undressing like a desperate, thirsty bitch. But Chitose quickly stops her, scolding her for being too eager and telling her to calm down. Meanwhile, Nasa seizes the moment and escapes, carefully examining his surroundings. He eventually stumbles into a room and, taking a deep breath, detects an unusual scent. As he surveys the room, he deduces that it must belong to Tsukasa. However, his eyes land on a peculiar rock displayed prominently in the room. Analyzing its shape and composition, he recognizes it as a moon rock, and he wonders how the heck they have this here since it's an artifact that should only be found in a museum. Suddenly, Charlotte bursts into the room, wielding an enormous sword capable of sending him to nirvana in a snap. She tells him she has come to execute a heavenly punishment on him for trespassing. In an attempt to harvest Nasa's head from his body, Chitose accidentally strikes the glass casing of the moon rock. The impact almost breaks it, causing nitrogen to leak. However, Nasa's head, even though it is shaped like yours, is not empty. Unlike yours, he showcases his skills by quickly fixing it up with tapes. A few moments later, Chitose reveals that the moon rock was a gift from Tsukasa to the family, surprising Nasa, and Chitose becomes shocked as she realizes that dude doesn't even know much about his wife. The memory of Tsukasa saving her during a childhood mountain climbing incident resurfaces, fueling Chitose's frustration. She cannot fathom how Tsukasa ended up marrying someone she considers unworthy. Wasting no time, Charlotte launches her infidelity scheme. She forcibly presses Nasa's head onto her chest while Aurora snaps photos and edits them. Nasa, seeing the fabricated photos, realizes that he is some deep shit as Aurora's Photoshop skill is god tier. He then remarks that she should be working for a criminal organization, rather than squandering her talents as a maid. As the chaos unfolds, Tsukasa suddenly appears in the room and notices the photos. Chitose demands that she divorce Nasa, but Tsukasa calmly asks for a private conversation with her husband. Unbeknownst to Chitose, this is a ploy to escape. Outside the room, Nasa apologizes and explains that he was framed. But Tsukasa replies that she would be a fool to believe that was true since she knows her risless husband is too pure to touch a woman. Meanwhile, Chitose and her scheming maids realize they've been used and rush to stop the couple. At the same time, Tsukasa takes Nasa through a hidden passageway leading to an old church. Seeing this, Nasa takes this as a golden opportunity to propose to her. With heartfelt words, he professes his undying love to her, thanks to ChatGPT, and seals it with their first spit exchange. The following day, Tsukasa checks the time and realizes it's almost time for her favorite TV show, so she tells Nasa that they'd better put on the TV now. However, at that instant, a light of realization dawns on her as she notices that she has not seen a TV here since she came. This prompts her to ask him where the TV is, and the deadbeat loser replies that he doesn't have a TV, shocking her. She then asks him if he watches movies, but dude doesn't even know anything about even the most popular movies like Star Wars and the Avengers, which makes Tsukasa question what he has been living for. She then begins a long, passionate, boring talk on why movies are good for the soul, which makes Nasa surprised that his usually gentle wife is a movie otaku. At the same time, back at the mansion, the maids ask Chitose if they should proceed with going after Tsukasa and her husband, but she tells them no, saying they'd better not disturb her from watching her favorite TV series, which is airing in the afternoon if they don't want to transition to glory. Meanwhile, Nasa and Tsukasa head to the electronics store to get a TV, and while Nasa considers which TV is best based on the picture quality, Tsukasa advises him to buy the cheapest because a good movie is good regardless of it if it is watched on an LCD or OLED display. Later that day at the bathhouse, Nasa excitedly announces to Kaname that he has proposed to Tsukasa. Kaname, curious, asks if he bought a ring for the proposal, but to her surprise, Nasa admits he never considered getting a ring important. This makes Kaname very angry because she can't fathom how stupid anyone has to be to think that. She then begins a brief relationship 101 class, stating that a ring is one of the top 3 essentials any husband should get for his wife. The other 2, she points out, are a luxurious trip and an exquisite meal. While waiting for Tsukasa to finish bathing, Nasa happens to see a couple on TV celebrating their engagement with a sparkling diamond ring. This gets him thinking about the cost of such a ring. On their way home later, he tells Tsukasa that he plans to head to work that afternoon. They soon reach a park, and as they sit, the two become awkwardly silent with Nasa wondering what to do now. He looks at her and wonders if she is lonely because he won't be back until night. Then he grabs her hand and suddenly leans in for a kiss. Meanwhile, Chitose' maids catch them doing this and wonder if it is best they report back to Chitose, but they decide not to, because she is a typical Karen and her anger issues is not something they want to deal with now. Nasa and Tsukasa become embarrassed after this, and on getting home later, as Nasa prepares to leave for work, he fears that she would be gone before he returns, but Tsukasa assures him she will be waiting for him as long as he comes back early. After working for a while, Nasa begins to think about his wife and reasons that she must have felt lonely because he was going to work. He admits that he also misses her and wishes there was some way to ease the loneliness, even though they are both apart. Just then, he suddenly realizes that this might be what a ring is for, something to remind him of her when she is not there. As he heads home that night, he thinks about how he searched for her for years with no success, but now she is waiting for him at home. When Nasa arrives home, he discovers that Tsukasa has already prepared dinner. As they eat, he brings up the idea of getting a diamond engagement ring to symbolize their love. Tsukasa is taken aback by his unexpected romantic gesture, but quickly points out that they are already married, making an engagement ring seem odd. Instead, she explains that what they need is a wedding ring. Realizing the noob doesn't know the difference between an engagement ring and a wedding ring, Tsukasa takes the opportunity to educate him. After her detailed explanation, Nasa becomes even more determined to buy a diamond wedding ring. Tsukasa tries to reason with him, pointing out how incredibly expensive diamond rings are, but Nasa remains stubborn as he insists on getting them even though his 2-year salary can't afford one. Tsukasa concludes that he probably doesn't know the prices of diamonds, and accepting that her words won't change his mind, she decides to let him experience the truth firsthand. The following day, she takes him to a jewelry store, specializing in diamond rings. When Nasa sees the price tags, he is utterly shocked because he might need hard labor of 10 years to buy one of them. He asks why the heck they are this expensive, and the saleswoman explains that this particular store offers the highest quality of diamonds in the city. Hearing this, Nasa is determined to spend his parents' retirement funds on buying a diamond ring, but Tsukasa quickly pulls him out of the store before the idiot puts his generation in debt. She clarifies that her intention was only to show him how pricey diamond rings can be, not to encourage him to drain his future earnings. Despite her reasoning, Nasa remains unwavering in his resolve to get the ring, and seeing his determination, Tsukasa takes him to a less expensive jewelry shop. When they arrive, Nasa is surprised to see that the prices are significantly lower than the first store, but to Tsukasa, they're still too costly. They leave without making a purchase. Nasa then opens up about why the ring is so important to him. It explains that he wants her to have something to look at whenever they're apart, something that reminds her of him. Tsukasa is touched by his sentiment and plants a kiss on his cheek, embarrassing him. Finally, she leads him to the most affordable shop they can find, where they buy the cheapest ring made for broke couples. Nasa feels uncertain about whether such an inexpensive ring can carry much emotional significance, but Tsukasa reassures him, saying that the price doesn't matter. What matters is the thought behind it. So whenever she looks at the ring, it will remind her of how much he cares for her. Later that night, Tsukasa begins her night kickboxing routine while she sleeps, and as usual, she gets up in her sleepy state to drink some water. However, instead of grabbing Nasa's cover this time as her custom is, she opens it and sleeps right beside him, on his arm, shocking him. The thirsty perv wonders if he should use this opportunity to begin Act 1 Scene 1 of their plot development, but he fears that she might wake up and hate him if she sees this. However, he decides to spoon her anyway, as she is his wife after all, and he instantly discovers that weather for two is not a myth. He is surprised about how warm her body is, and as he fulfills his dirty desires by placing his hand on her melon, she suddenly turns to face him and then kisses him, shocking him. She soon rolls back to her feuding, but not until after Nasa had pressed the life out of her juicy bags. The next day, he wakes up looking like a depressed monkey, since he didn't sleep all through the night. Following this, he starts to search for where to order double beds online because he wants to have Tsukasa sleep beside him every night, but the moron convinces himself that it's rather because he doesn't want her sleeping on the floor. He then considers that they would need a bigger space to accommodate both of them, which will allow a bigger TV for some plot sessions during Netflix and chill, and a bath for more naughtier adventures. Meanwhile, his brain suddenly fries as he thinks about this, remembering what he had felt the previous night, and he immediately runs to Tsukasa to ask her if she'd prefer they move to a bigger apartment. However, she is too conservative, and she replies that she is okay with the studio apartment they live in. Nasa tries to convince her to see why they might want to move, but she tells him that this place makes her feel closer to him, shocking him. Meanwhile, Nasa is still interested in having his wife sleep beside him, because of his naughty desires of course, so he continues to search for how to get Tsukasa to want it too. He tells Kaname about it, and she points out that this means they have both fallen asleep together while holding hands. Nasa imagines how sweet this would be immediately and becomes more determined to get himself and Tsukasa sleeping on the same surface level at all costs. However, Kaname asks Nasa if Tsukasa is willing to move though, and he replies that she claims to love the apartment. Hearing this, Kaname tells him that his wife is nice, because if she was the one who got married to a guy living in a pen, she would have burnt down the shitty apartment and dumped his broke ass. Later on his way home, Nasa wonders how best to convince Tsukasa to want a bigger space without pushing her away. Meeting her, he decides to lecture her on the benefits of living in a bigger apartment. Because he knows she loves movies, he uses that to convince her that they would have a bigger TV for a more cinema feel. But deep down, Bro is only concerned about more rooms and space to clap. She finally accepts, but on their way home, he realizes that they would need a guarantor to get a new space, since they both still need permission to stay up past 10 p.m. However, this won't be easy because he has to tell his parents that he is now married. He later steps out to call his mom and opens up about getting married, but he assures her that it's nothing to worry about because it's the girl he had always told her about who saved him from being ice-caved by Truck-kun. At that moment, Tsukasa overhears him, and after he hangs up, she asks him what the heck he told his mom about her. He replies that he had said she was the cutest thing he had ever set his eyes upon. But this only makes Tsukasa concerned because his mom might already have a high expectation of her and end up disappointed when she discovers that she is Baba Yaga's distant cousin. Nasa tells he is not capping about her beauty, however, Tsukasa says that they still have to meet his parents anyway. The next morning, while Nasa feels nervous about this, he suddenly receives a text from his mom, who somehow already figured out that he reached out because he and his wife need them as guarantors to get a bigger apartment. He is shocked and Tsukasa tells him his mom must be the low-budget Enola Holmes that never got past the audition. Nasa's mom ends her text with a demand to see his new wife, or there will be no guarantors for them, which leaves them with no means of escaping that decision. However, since Nasa's parents live in a different city, he reasons that this could be their honeymoon, so he becomes excited even though he is still nervous about introducing Tsukasa to his parents. Meanwhile, Aurora and Charlotte, who have been tailing the couple, report back to Chidose about their movements. At the same time, Tsukasa proposes that they buy a camera to document their memories in a photo diary during their trip to his parents' home, which Nasa sees as a brilliant idea. After getting the camera, Nasa starts by capturing Instagram-worthy shots of Tsukasa by a lake, and Nasa soon realizes he was made for the camera and the camera for him. The following day, they head to Kyoto, snapping pictures as they go. Meanwhile, Chidose and her maids secretly follow their every move and are puzzled by why they are taking the bus instead of the high-speed train. Undeterred, they track the bus in a car. In the bus, Tsukasa enjoys a peaceful nap, while Nasa, though uncomfortable with the seats, pretends everything is fine for Tsukasa's sake. Later, as they relax, Chidose watches them from afar, her jealousy growing as she realizes that there is a strong bond between them. However, she swears to separate them by all means. Charlotte and Aurora remark that they look sweet together and wonder why Chidose would want to break up such a nice couple. Chidose hushes them, confident that they will break up because newlyweds typically face challenges during their honeymoon. At a stop, Nasa realizes he has lost his wallet, so he rushes back to the bus to search for it. Chidose laughs mischievously, having never seen a guy so clueless and bird-brained, thinking this will surely annoy Tsukasa and lead to a breakup. However, Nasa eventually finds his wallet, and Tsukasa somehow finds this stupid behavior displayed by her husband cute. Later, Nasa suggests they eat at the food court, but Tsukasa objects that they have something special instead of eating at a chain restaurant. They decide to try food seasoned with lime, and Nasa snaps some embarrassing photos of Tsukasa as she tastes the slime, which upsets her. Seeing this, Chidose expects this to cause a breakup, but they resolve the issue when Nasa tells Tsukasa she can have whatever she wants, shocking Chidose. Tsukasa chooses melon bread, and they settle on that. As she eats it, Nasa excuses himself to the restroom, giving Chidose an opportunity to confront Tsukasa since she can't take their bullshit anymore. She expresses her disappointment in her choice of partner, and in how she acts all lovey-dovey with him, as if she's just another normal girl. Tsukasa calmly replies that she is indeed a normal girl who loves sausages and not some over-independent feminist who claims to hate men. Just then, a TV crew arrives to film content about a dish, and upon seeing this, Tsukasa quickly grabs Nasa and runs off because they'd better not be caught on those guys' camera. Chitose attempts to chase after them, but her maids drag her along as they also run away, or the grandmother could find out where they are if she sees them on TV. This frustrates Chitose, and she loudly yells to Tsukasa from afar, asking why she chose a bottom-gi like Nasa to be her husband. Later on the bus, Tsukasa confides her fear that Nasa's parents won't approve of their marriage, but Nasa reassures that it's nothing to worry about because he is gonna convince them no matter what. Meanwhile, Chitose orders her maids to chase after the couple who managed to escape. But the maids are too busy devouring food like they had been on a diet all their lives. Hours later, Tsukasa and Nasa arrive in Kyoto, and Nasa is thrilled at the thought of exploring the city with Tsukasa. However, Tsukasa surprises him by expressing more interest in checking out Kyoto's bakeries. This completely baffles Nasa, because he can't imagine how she would prefer to see bakeries in a new city when there are already so many where they came from. He tries to redirect her attention by highlighting Kyoto's unique shrines, temples, and fascinating historical landmarks, but quickly realizes that Tsukasa doesn't give a fuck about history. She's Gen Z. Despite not being particularly drawn to historical spots, Tsukasa reluctantly agrees to go along with him when she notices that he loves it. Before long, she tries on a kimono, or whatever that is called, and on seeing her, Nasa's brain suffers syntax error for a moment because of how gorgeous she looks. At that moment, they cross paths with Chitose and her maids once again, and while Chitose is still against their union, Nasa proposes that Charlotte and Aurora show Tsukasa around Kyoto while he takes some time to have a private conversation with Chitose, so he can get her to know him better and perhaps convince her that he is the perfect guy for Tsukasa. When they are alone, Chitose declares her intention to pretend to be Nasa's girlfriend to test if he is truly worthy of Tsukasa. Determined to prove himself, Nasa goes all out, suggesting they take a rickshaw ride to have a proper conversation. Meanwhile, at a cafe, the maids grilled Tsukasa about her feelings for Nasa and why she has chosen to spend her life with someone they consider beneath her. Tsukasa confesses that she finds Nasa adorable and, in a reflective moment, shares how she loves the way he always praises her in front of others. At the same time, Nasa takes Chitose to a famous tango shop and encourages her to try the food. Though hesitant at first, Chitose eventually tastes it and realizes it is the most delicious thing she has ever eaten. Afterward, she demands to know why Nasa loves Tsukasa. Nasa passionately explains how cute and beautiful Tsukasa is, which infuriates Chitose. She states that even a stranger knows that and claims to know Tsukasa far better than him. She accuses him of being clueless about his own wife and goes on to describe Tsukasa's athletic abilities, her calm demeanor, and her cool personality. However, this only makes her more frustrated, and she storms off, muttering about how she cannot believe Tsukasa chose to be with someone like Nasa instead of staying with her, someone who understands her better than anyone else. Just then, Nasa shares that Tsukasa had saved his life 2 years ago, when a truck nearly hit him, to which Chitose adds that Tsukasa had also once saved her. Nasa admits that ever since that moment, he has felt destined to be with her, and even though he doesn't know her as well as Chitose claims to, he vows to spend his life proving that their love is genuine. He finally finishes off with a Reddit quote that says, "You don't get married because you've proven you're in love, but rather so that you can prove it," and then he drops his mic, leaving Chitose speechless. Later that day, Tsukasa asks if Nasa managed to gain Chitose's approval, and it replies that he is not sure, but Chitose has decided to return to Tokyo for now. With that resolved, their train arrives and the couple gets on board as it's time to finally meet Nasa's parents. On their journey, Tsukasa remarks that she never knew he was from Nara, but Nasa replies that even though it almost sounds like his name, he is not from there. She says that means he must have grown up there, but he replies that he didn't grow up there either, shocking her as she asks why the fuck his parents are there then. He explains that although he grew up in Tokyo, his weird parents decided to relocate to Nara because his father is an archaeologist and wanted to explore the area. Meanwhile, his mom instantly agreed to it because she wanted to see some authentic deers. Tsukasa wonders if she will get along with his parents, especially since Nasa describes them as complete weirdos, and the dude tells her to wait to see the master at work. When she asks how he plans to introduce her, The useless buffalo dramatically replies that he will tell his parents that this is wife, the cutest girl in the universe, but Tsukasa says heck no. When they finally arrive, both are nervous about meeting Nasa's parents, and as they try to boost each other's confidence, they suddenly notice Nasa's mother, Kanoka, peeking at them from a distance. Nasa decides to go in to meet his mother, hoping she doesn't act like she just returned from a psychiatric rehab, but she doesn't disappoint him in that and even exceeds his expectations. She reveals that Nasa's father, Enishi, has also been so anxious about their visit, as they are not yet mentally prepared for their son's wife's revelation. A few minutes later, they sit down together, and as the conversation unfolds, Nasa's parents begin displaying their schizophrenic episode, which leaves Tsukasa wondering what the actual fuck. Out of nowhere, Enishi insists that Nasa take a bath, surprising the dude who never really takes his bath. He protests that he doesn't want to, but his mom joins in pulling him as his father commands that he leaves immediately. Enishi adds that he needs to talk with Tsukasa alone, but Nasa replies that this is more the reason he has to stay. However, Tsukasa encourages him to go, assuring him that she would be fine, so he agrees to go take his bath, but is still bothered about what they might be discussing. After the bath, Tsukasa mentions having an interesting conversation with Enishi, saying he told her a lot about him, and when Nasa asks what his father told her, she tells him it's confidential. Later, they head to Nasa's old room to look around. While exploring, Kanoka interrupts to ask if they plan to spend the night there. When Nasa confirms, she cheekily reminds them that the walls aren't soundproof and the parents' room is next door, so they are cautious of potential melodious sounds during the night. Bro is too slow and doesn't get the innuendo at first, but after his mother leaves, he becomes embarrassed about what she said since he and Tsukasa will be sleeping on the same surface level for the first time. Later that night, as they prepare to sleep, Nasa nervously asks Tsukasa if she would sleep on his arm, and she agrees, moving closer to him. However, his arm soon becomes weak from the pressure, leaving him uncomfortable, but the dude pretends to be fine. However, later, he shyly asks for a goodnight kiss, saying that is the only way he can sleep tonight, which Tsukasa happily gives. The following morning, Tsukasa watches the sunrise and Enishi joins her, remarking that she's quite the early riser. In response, she surprises him by calling him father, nearly giving the old man a seizure. After exchanging some lighthearted small talk, they visit Enishi's library, where he is amazed by Tsukasa's ability to read old documents with ease. Moments later, Nasa enters and is equally stunned, but he asks if she is just humoring his dad because he knows she doesn't like history. However, she lies that she is a lover of the past in an attempt to make his father like her. Following that, Tsukasa then shares her plan to make Nora more enjoyable by focusing on taking photos of her husband at old shrines, as she isn't particularly interested in historical sites herself. They head to see Nora's great Buddha statue, where Tsukasa humorously spends a lot of time capturing embarrassing selfies of Nasa's messed up face. As they tour more historical landmarks, Nasa finds himself impressed and a little shocked by Tsukasa's extensive knowledge of these places. She modestly attributes it to her excellent memory. When Nasa suggests they take selfies together, like typical couples, Tsukasa teases him, suspecting he's just looking for an excuse to juggle her jiggles. Even so, she goes along with it, and they manage to take some ugly selfies together. Later, they visit the site of the Io Castle. The area, now empty after its buildings were relocated to Kyoto, leaves Tsukasa feeling sad over how little remains of its past, so she suggests they record videos to show they were once here. That evening, Enishi shockingly kowtows before Tsukasa, thanking her for saving his son's life and expressing how indebted the family feels. He earnestly asks her to continue looking after Nasa, and she reassures him with a heartfelt promise to do her best. As their trip comes to an end, Tsukasa leaves behind a collection of amusing photos of Nasa for his parents. Despite the short duration of their visit, she treasures every moment and confides that being with Nasa always puts her at ease. A few hours later, they return to Tokyo, only to find their apartment reduced to ashes. Thankfully, Tsukasa had packed most of her belongings in her suitcase. Nasa, however, loses everything, but he is not really concerned since he doesn't have many valuable possessions anyway. But he goes in search of the wedding tree gift, which miraculously survived the fire. Overjoyed, Nasa treasures the fact that the tree, symbolizing their love, remains intact, and Tsukasa, touched by his reaction, is surprised at how much he values even the smallest details of their relationship. Reassuring her, Nasa calmly explains that there's no need to worry. He's always prepared for emergencies. He has insurance, secured their valuables in a safety deposit box, and backed up essential data in the cloud. To lighten the mood and figure out their next steps, he suggests they head to the bathhouse. As they stroll, Tsukasa, impressed by Nasa's calm and resourceful handling of the situation, suddenly tells him she loves him, which flusters him and makes him speechless. Once they're at the bathhouse, Nasa begins to consider moving into a hotel with Tsukasa. But the depraved idiot starts to think of the naughty things he will do to her in the hotel room. Just then, Kaname appears out of nowhere, calling him out for being a perv. She accuses him of thinking dirty, and he denies, but she tells him that his standing rod is enough proof, instantly embarrassing him. Kaname then suggests they stay at the bathhouse temporarily until they find a new place, exciting him. He immediately informs Tsukasa about his, who admires his openness to receiving help and his gratitude toward others. Later, Kaname gives the couple a quick tour of the bathhouse where they'll be staying. During this, she worries briefly about her sister Aya, who has a hopeless crush on Nasa, and remains clueless that Nasa and Tsukasa are not siblings but a married couple. Kaname approaches Aya and casually informs her that Nasa and Tsukasa will be living with them. Kaname then tries to hint at the fact that Nasa and Tsukasa are a couple, but Aya, deserving the most clueless character in anime history, still doesn't get the gist. At that moment, Nasa joins the conversation, expressing his gratitude to Aya for letting them stay in her home while also flaunting the ring on his ring finger. However, she still doesn't notice the wedding ring because she's got the brain of a fish. Nasa then mentions introducing Tsukasa to his parents back in Nara, and although Aya nearly puts the pieces together, she finally shows she is a hopeless idiot as she concludes that Nasa and Tsukasa must be trying to be on good terms with their parents. Just then, Aya's mother enters the scene and casually mentions having just spoken to Nasa's wife. This finally sparks a moment of clarity for Aya, and she realizes Nasa is married. She is shocked by this as she thinks that she has been wasting her emotions, liking him all the while without realizing that he is taken. Her mother tries to comfort her, comparing Aya's situation to her own experience of being abandoned by her husband. Meanwhile, Nasa feels guilty about Aya's reaction, but Kaname tells him not to worry about it since it is Aya's fault for being too slow in confessing her love for him. After shedding a few tears, Aya regains her composure and determined not to let this setback hold her down. She confidently tells Nasa to take good care of Tsukasa, resolving to chase her dream of becoming a game streamer. A few days later, Tsukasa points out that they're running low on clean clothes since they have not washed since they returned from their trip. When Nasa offers to handle the laundry, she shyly refuses, feeling embarrassed at the idea of him washing her underwear. While sorting through their dirty clothes, this thirsty MC curiously sniffs one of Tsukasa's clothes while she is away, only to get caught by Kaname, who immediately brands him a naughty bastard. Later, Nasa and Tsukasa head to the laundromat, where she shows him the proper way to wash clothes, as his earlier attempts were less than thorough. During their conversation, Tsukasa casually reveals that she's currently wearing just her tracksuit, without any additional underlayers, which nearly sends Nasa into a state of shock. Seeing his reaction, she becomes embarrassed, and Nasa seizes the moment to snap a picture, feeling it's too good an opportunity to pass up. That same day, Kaname encourages Nasa to take Tsukasa shopping to replace the clothes they lost in the fire, or she will keep dressing like a refugee. This makes some sense, so Nasa decides to take Tsukasa to the mall after this, and there, she tries on several outfits. He finds one very cute outfit, but he is uncomfortable with it, because it is a bit too revealing. Tsukasa realizes that her husband is protective and jealous and decides to go for something else instead. Their shopping spree eventually leads them to the underwear section. As they walk through the section, Nasa feels really embarrassed because he thinks it might be against the law to be in such a place as a guy with a fully loaded magnum. To help calm him down, Tsukasa holds his hand, but they ultimately decide it's better for her to shop there alone. As they head home, Nasa nervously asks if she might one day let him see her in cute underwear, and she shyly replies that she will show him as much as he wants. However, this question leaves them both too embarrassed to continue the conversation, so they quickly change the subject. After enjoying their time at the bathhouse, Nasa feels the room is a bit dated and starts looking forward to moving out. Meanwhile, Tsukasa prepares a delicious dinner for them, much to Nasa's delight. Growing up in a family that loved fried food, he is thrilled by the pork dish she serves, savoring every bite and expressing his wish to enjoy her cooking forever. Kaname soon drops by bringing a gift, a perfectly ripe muskmelon. Its sweetness captivates both of them, and Bro wishes he can squeeze Tsukasa's melon juice in his mouth too. Meanwhile, they decide they must find a way to show their gratitude to Kaname. Seizing the lighthearted moment, Nasa playfully insists on feeding Tsukasa a slice. Initially embarrassed, she relents after he reminds her that she had fed him earlier during their journey. Although flustered, she accepts, letting him feed her directly. The next day, Nasa receives a call from his former landlord, who invites him to check out a new apartment complex. Kaname isn't thrilled about the news, as she seems to be enjoying the lovers' romance and doesn't want them to leave. Still, the landlord, wanting to maintain their good relationship, offers Nasa and Tsukasa the same affordable rent as before. Later, the couple visits the model apartment and is blown away by the modern design, the beautifully crafted hallways, and the panoramic views from the upper floors. The spacious bathroom with its stunning view especially catches their attention, but Nasa, the cultured creep, can only think of them developing a shower plot. In the master bedroom, they are awestruck by the enormous bed, a far cry from the small futons they are used to. On their way back home, Nasa resolves to work harder to make the new apartment a reality. However, Tsukasa reassures him that no matter where they live, she would be happy as long as they can create a warm and loving home together. The next day, Kaname explains her daily routine working at the bathhouse, where she starts her mornings at 5:30 to clean before heading to school. When Tsukasa offers to help, Kaname initially declines, reminding her that she's a guest. However, Tsukasa insists, feeling uneasy about staying without contributing. Relenting, Kaname lets her assist, and Tsukasa quickly notices how Nasa's clever inventions have automated much of the cleaning, making the bathhouse operation smoother. Kaname assigns her some tricky, hard-to-reach areas, and she is pleasantly surprised by Tsukasa's meticulous cleaning skills. Afterward, Kaname expresses her gratitude to Tsukasa for saving Nasa's life, sharing her deep admiration for him and explaining how much he has supported her family. Later that day, Tsukasa asks Nasa about his favorite food, and to her surprise, he says it's curry, though he also appreciates hot pot for its nutritional benefits. Hearing this, Tsukasa decides to pick up ingredients for curry, and Nasa accompanies her on the shopping trip. As they step out, they bump into Kaname's mother, who cheekily suggests that Nasa take his wife to a park to spice up their relationship. However, Nasa is a complete idiot on relationship matters, as he completely misses the whole point. The couple continues to the supermarket, and on their way back home, Nasa jokes that they're lucky not to be a school couple, otherwise, parents might be waiting to spank them. Tsukasa playfully teases him about accidentally leading them to an abandoned park, and mischievously asks if he has any silly thoughts in his mind. Nasa candidly admits he only thought about kissing her, but Tsukasa feels too self-conscious, thinking her mouth might stink like an anime convention, leaving Nasa slightly disappointed. Despite this, she remarks that the park feels peaceful, almost like they are the only people in the world. Suddenly, Nasa hugs her tightly from behind, catching her by surprise. Though startled, Tsukasa admits the embrace, despite being intense, feels comforting. Nasa then asks if she's happy being married to him, and she wonders why he would ask such an odd question, but she reassures him that she is. She further states that being with him brings new experiences and opportunities to learn something new every day. With those heartfelt words, cuddle much more, which leaves Nasa pants damp from too much excitement. A few days later, Chitos and her maids learn that Nasa and Tsukasa's apartment has burned down. They are shocked and wonder where the two are living now. Coincidentally, Tsukasa happens to be walking past the charred building, so they take the chance to ask her about her current living arrangements. Chitos is appalled when Tsukasa jokingly claims she's now residing at a local playground inside one of the play structures. Curious and skeptical, Chitosa decides to investigate, only for Tsukasa to use the opportunity to slip away from her persistent inquiries. Tsukasa soon returns home and meets Nasa, scavenging through some old stuff in the room. While going through the items, he finds an item and wonders what it is. Tsukasa, realizing he is not that smart, tells him it is used for making takoyaki, surprising him. She then asks him if he wants to have takoyaki tonight, since they have seen this, and he becomes excited, suggesting they host a taco party then. He invites Aya and Kaname, but Kaname mentions that Aya is still feeling uneasy about the whole marriage situation. As this unfolds, Chitosa tracks Tsukasa down to the bathhouse and bursts inside. She asks them if this is where they live, and Tsukasa, knowing she is just beauty with no brains, decides to play on her intelligence by saying she has been sleeping on the bathhouse floor and using milk bottles as pillows, which the fish-brained quickly believes. However, Nasa clears up the confusion, explaining that they are actually staying in a borrowed room at an inn. Following that, the maids start to admire the bathhouse annoying Chitose, who immediately cautions them that this is not what they came for. But Kaname interrupts by offering that she cools her head in the bath, after which she can continue with her discussion, shocking her. They head to the bath immediately to have some fun. Afterward, the idiot has completely forgotten what she came for and is almost leaving with her maids when she suddenly remembers. She comes back to question why they didn't come stay at her mansion instead, to which Tsukasa replies that it's because Chitose doesn't have a game console. Determined to change that, Chitose declares she'll buy every gaming system available on Temu to entice Tsukasa to visit her mansion. But while Tsukasa gets carried away with the promises, Aya, also a game of Taku, shows up out of nowhere to voice out her interest. Later that day, with everyone gathered, Tsukasa decides to kick off a taco party. Aya, however, seizes the moment to challenge Tsukasa's cooking skills, questioning if she's truly worthy of being Nasa's wife. She insists that over-pampered youngsters like Tsukasa wouldn't know their way around a kitchen anyway. Undeterred, Tsukasa, with some assistance from Chitose's maid, prepares a feast that leaves everyone, including Aya, thoroughly impressed, which makes Aya realize that her own cooking abilities are crap. Not one to give up easily, Aya shifts the challenge to a Street Fighter match. They start talking about the different games there, but Nasa is completely clueless about them. So they ask her which games he knows them, to which he replies Minesweeper and Solitaire, leaving the group wondering what kind of backwater upbringing he had. The first round kicks off, and Nasa is swiftly defeated by Tsukasa. Even Kaname, despite her best efforts, can't match Tsukasa's skills. Charlotte and Aurora then step in to leaven things up by organizing a gaming tournament. They add a twist. The winner earns a favor from Nasa. Chitose, Aya, and Tsukasa join the tournament, with Chitose devising a mischievous plan to humiliate Nasa by making him do a handstand with his meat exposed if she wins. However, Aya defeats her effortlessly. Refusing to accept defeat, Chitose demands a rematch, only to get her ass whipped again and again. When it's Tsukasa's turn, Chitose reveals that Tsukasa used to spend entire days playing video games. Despite this, Tsukasa loses and blames it on being rusty, suggesting they switch to another game she has a better advantage in. As they begin to play this, Aya, unfamiliar with the retro controls, quickly finds herself at a disadvantage and loses. Aya is shocked by this and asks for a rematch too. As the matches continue, it becomes clear to everyone else at the party that Tsukasa and Aya have forgotten about the prize and are now playing purely for their pride. However, Aya starts to get the hang of the controls, which shocks Tsukasa because she didn't expect it to happen that fast, and eventually the match ends in a tie, with the two commending each other for being pretty good. The party then shifts focus to making and enjoying tacos. Watching Tsukasa cook happily alongside Nasa, Chitose begins to accept their marriage, and the maids take this moment to tease her, asking if she's finally done scheming against the couple. Chitose shyly replies that as long as Tsukasa is happy, she is content. Later, as the party winds down, they wash dishes together. Nasa asks Tsukasa what she would have requested as her favor if she had won the tournament. Just then, Tsukasa suddenly responds with a sweet kiss. Some days later, Nasa receives a call from his workplace about a problem they need him to fix. Overhearing the conversation, Tsukasa asks what the problem is, and he replies that it is not serious but will require some time to get it done. Hearing this, she tells him to be careful, stating that she knows him to be a workaholic who doesn't know when to stop. He laughs it off immediately, denying that he is that bad, but Tsukasa tells him he might need to re-examine himself. Despite her advice, Nasa soon gets to work as he starts to operate his laptops like a certified hacker, and continues at it for the next few hours until he eventually solves the problem. However, he suddenly develops a fever and starts to cough, which makes Tsukasa offer to check his temperature. He initially refuses, claiming that he is okay, but she insists, and upon checking, he discovers that he is really not fine. Tsukasa yells that he is going to the hospital right away, and after they return, she begins to care for him. Later, while he sleeps, she wonders what to do to help him get better, and considers doing some nasty things that would relieve him. But she is too shy to do that, so she decides to take his sleeping pictures instead. When he wakes up later that evening, she tells him she had wanted to do some ungodly things to him as his newly wedded wife when he was asleep. Just then, she thinks of wiping his body for him, and she immediately tells him to get into his birthday suit, shocking him. He embarrassingly does this, as she uses a cool cloth to dab around his chest and stomach. Nasa's meat enters the scene, and he awkwardly asks her not to go any lower, to prevent turning his little Rey Mysterio into the Rock. He tells her instead of getting cool, he is feeling hot in a different kind of way, which makes Tsukasa tell him she wants to wipe his willy, so he needs to strip his remaining clothes. He becomes embarrassed and tells her no, but she insists since she is his wife after all. However, he tells her that she would also be embarrassed if the situation was reversed, which immediately turns her all red as she thinks about it. She stands up, feeling even more embarrassed. A few moments later, the idiot begins to desire falling sick every once in a while, so Tsukasa can take care of him like this. They soon get talking, and Nasa tells Tsukasa how he rarely falls sick, but she tells him that's a cap, saying he does but just doesn't notice whenever he is not fine. She reminds him of the day he was almost isolated by a truck when he still followed after her like a sheep going to the slaughter, even though he was severely injured. She then tells him to learn to slow down and take care of himself or he would just die one day. That night, as they lie in bed, Tsukasa holds his hand, though Nasa wonders if he's imagining it. She suddenly wraps her arms around him from behind and confesses that she's been worried about him all day, and then says she is glad that he is better now. Ro is touched by her words and immediately turns to kiss her. Then, the kiss continues until Nasa begins to feel frisky and starts to neck her. But Tsukasa scolds him, insisting he needs to rest and should focus on getting better before he thinks of working out with her. The next morning, Kaname tells Tsukasa that if she plans to attend the festival, she should wear a yukata befitting a married woman. Taking her advice to heart, Tsukasa decides to buy yukatas for both herself and Nasa. As she changes into hers, Nasa asks if he can catch a glimpse, and she playfully allows him a quick look. Completely mesmerized by how breathtaking she looks in the yukata, Nasa kisses her only for her to push him aside, reminding him they'll be late if they get carried away. Later that day, as they get ready for the festival, Nasa can't help but take several photos of Tsukasa, unable to resist capturing her beauty. When they finally arrive, Tsukasa immediately craves traditional festival treats like takoyaki. After eating, they stumble upon Kaname and Aya, who are running a goldfish catching stall to support local businesses. Tsukasa confidently declares that she's skilled at catching goldfish, while Nasa tries his luck to impress her, only to fail miserably. Their next stop is a nearby shrine, where Tsukasa makes a wish for a joyful marriage and good health for Nasa. She opens up to him, admitting that while others admire his hardworking nature, she often worries about his well-being. She promises to keep encouraging him to take better care of himself. Touched by her words, Nasa hugs her tightly, thanking her for her thoughtfulness. Tsukasa then shares her hope that he will live a long and healthy life. Not long after, their friends join them to watch the fireworks display. Nasa reveals that he's taken plenty of photos of Tsukasa throughout the day and jokes that he'll never delete them, even the embarrassing ones. Surrounded by their friends, the couple enjoys the vibrant summer fireworks, and Nasa silently wishes they can continue watching them together every year for the rest of their lives. The end. Would you rather marry early like Nasa and Tsukasa or late? Comment below. If you watched this far, you're a real G and you deserve a hot steamy plot. Clap the like button if you love this recap, and click this video over here for another recap like this.